Hello, Dr. Dayan.
Uh, Greetings to all. I'm sorry there's some technical issue with the presenter. Just allow us for 2 minutes, 5 minutes only that we are working on this one. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience.
All right.
So, dear participant, we have some technical issue with Dr. Ahmed. So we are going, now we are working to fix it. Sorry for this inconvenience. We are going to proceed for about 5 minutes. Thank you. Dear colleagues, I think now Dr. Diane is back again. Just a few seconds to start. Thank you for being patient.
Hello, can you hear me, guys?
Yes, you are very much audible.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We hear you very,
So-
very clear. I think we can start now. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Firstly, thank you very much, Dr. Murtada, for this great introduction. And I would like to thank also the African Asian Rural Development Organization for this great opportunity. As a second time to be giving a lecture with them. I'm also would like to thank the University of Bahrain, in particular College of Veterinary Medicine, and I can say well done, and I wish you all the best. Today we are going to give the second lecture in the international online training, which is sponsored by the African Asian Rural Development Organization. Under the theme climate change challenges, the way forward to reinforcement of livestock in developing countries. So my lecture will be on the dynamic response of livestock production system to climate change in developing countries. Actually, I don't like to give a lecture from one side. I want to interact with you. So we have got a video in the middle of the lecture. So we will be discussing it after watching it, hopefully. Okay. We're gonna start with the background. As we know, animal agricultural subsector contributes about 40% of the agricultural gross domestic product in developing countries. So the livestock is very important in the economy of developing countries. In case of the Sudan, actually we export meat and we import some of dairy products. So we know meat and livestock, livestock very important for our economy in Sudan. So livestock offers substantial opportunities for food, nutritional security, and sustainable development with appropriate adaptation to climate change. So we know that the food from animal origin are rich in energy and has high biological value of protein and rich with minerals and vitamins, as well as the essential amino acids. So the animal origin can offer us 33% of the global protein and 17% of the global calories consumed, which make the food from animal origin is very important to the world. Global demand for food from animal origin is growing rapidly. Why? If we ask ourselves, why is growing rapidly? I think in order to meet the demand of the population size, as we are increasing, so there is increasing in our demand in terms of food from animal origin. And it is clear that the animal agriculture subsector, we mean livestock sector, will need to be expanded in the future in order to meet our demand as well. So there is a need of a sustainable livestock production. Climate change is our issue, is a major threat to the sustainability of livestock production system globally, and in particular in developing countries. This threat will be both direct or indirect. Directly through the increased temperature, morbidity, and mortality. We will be discussing the factors that we will be discussing the factors of direct effect and indirect effect. And indirect through reduced feed quantity and quality and increased animal diseases. So climate change becomes a real challenge for sustainable livestock production. That's why we are here today with AARDO, with University of Bahri, with you and my colleagues, to be aware about our challenges and how we're gonna adapt with the impact of the climate change on livestock production system, and how we're gonna produce and sustain our production under these circumstances of the climate change. Okay. Therefore, the climate change has a considerable adverse impact on livestock growth rate, milk and egg production, and reproductive performance. And if we look at rural areas, rural people are seriously affected by climate change because they are highly dependent on livestock to survive. Meanwhile, livestock are a direct source of both methane and nitrous oxide, and indirect source of those gases and carbon through land use and feed production. Globally, about 14.5% of the greenhouse gas emissions come from livestock supply chain. So, as we knew yesterday from the lecture of yesterday, I think we have got the same information regarding these sentences or this state. Impact of climate change on livestock production. It can be categorized into two categories: direct impact and indirect impact. If we look at the table, the major table 1, climate change impact on livestock production. The major influential factors: increased temperature, heat stress, observed impact on the animal. It can be reduced the feed intake. It also results in decline in animal milk and meat production. It also resulted in decreased reproductive performance, negatively affected immune functions, and increased mortality. And for the other influential factors: elevated carbon dioxide level, which can have indirect impact on the climate change, on the animal. It can change in the feedstuff profile. We will see and we will discuss all those observed impact in details. Change in pasture composition and forage production, increased temperature and elevated carbon dioxide level. It can result in changes in forage quality. Increased temperature also, it can has adverse impact on water availability and increasing water use. More frequent extreme climate events. It could cause large seasonal variation in the resources. Unfortunately, we are also, as a livestock sector, we are also contributing in the climate change. This is another issue. So we have to stand together with the ecologists in order to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions from the ruminant. As we know, it comes from the fermentation of feed. So we also need to work together as a nutritionist, as an animal scientist, or animal production specialist, whatever we call it in different countries, in order to reduce the amount of green gas emission from the animal or from the supply chain of the livestock subsector. Effect of heat stress on livestock production. Heat stress, it can be defined as a physiological condition when the core body temperature of a given species exceeds its range specified for normal activity, which results from a total heat load. Internal production and environment, and this promotes reduce the stress. We will also having something about the behavioral responses of the animal in order to reduce the effect of heat stress. And as we know, the heat stress, the maintenance energy, it can be more. So the animals require more maintenance energy to survive, which can affect the animal performance in terms of production and in terms of reproductive as well. So we're gonna have less energy for production and reproduction. This eventually can also lead to losses of animal or lead to death. So heat stress, one of the most difficult things to the animal. It can affect, we will see, it can affect even the quantity, and it can affect even the quality of milk or the quality of meat as well. So if we look at this figure, relationship between heat stress and autonomic nervous system and the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis and gastrointestinal tract. So when the animal is stressed, the stress responses to high ambient temperature activate the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal gland or axis. Also activate the autonomic nervous system, so they can send messages to the adrenal gland, to the medulla and cortex of the adrenal gland in order to secrete the epinephrine and norepinephrine, which result in respiration, high respiration rate and panting, heart rate, increasing heart rate, rectal temperature, muscle gluconeogenesis. So this also can restrict of the blood flow to the GIT or gastrointestinal tract, or reduce the appetite of the animal, which can reduce the feed intake of the animal. And stress is not only responsible for the physiological and behavioral disorders, but also it can contribute to the impairment of gastrointestinal tract function and in integrity, leading to the inflammation, dysbiosis, hypoxia. We know dysbiosis is the imbalance of microflora in the gut, hypoxia, lack of the oxygen. So eventually it can lead to injuries in the gut or some problematic with the stomach disorders. Impact of heat stress on reproduction. Also, it can impact the reproduction. Heat stress affect reproduction for both sexes. For female heat stress, it can reduce the estrus period and fertility while increasing the incidence of anestrus and embryonic death. For female, there are declines in semen quality. Sorry, for males, there are declines in semen quality, testicular measurement, and quantity of fertile semen has been found by the researchers. Significant seasonal differences in reproductive performance in both sexes have been also reported by the scientists. And we can also look at the impact of heat stress on diseases and parasites. Actually, tomorrow we will be having a lecture about the impact of climate change on the animal health. I think current situation and the future. So I'm not going to give you details about the diseases and parasites, but we're gonna have it, we're gonna just overlook at it. Okay, heat stress can negatively affect immune functions via cell-mediated and humoral immune responses. As a result, period of hot weather can cause livestock to be more vulnerable to diseases and raise the incidence of certain diseases, such as mastitis, leading to an increased potential of morbidity and death. In addition, heat stress could affect the health condition of livestock through other functional pathways. For example, growing hogs, which is the, what do you call it? The swan, the pigs, the small pigs. Growing hogs may suffer from intestinal injuries if exposed to acute heat for several hours. Broilers and laying hens are also reported to experience intestinal microbiota alteration under heat stress. Increased temperature and altered precipitation may accelerate the incidence of pathogens and parasites. Also, you will be knowing about the changing in the precipitation patterns and high ambient temperature and its effect on the migration of the pathogens and parasites. Impact of heat stress on production in dairy and beef cattle. As we know, in developing countries, we have got large scale of dairy and beef cattle. In case in Sudan, like there is small holders around big cities of dairy cattle, and also we have got a finishing feedlot for beef. They can also affect it by the heat stress. Heat stress negatively affect milk and meat production. In addition to quantity and quality of animal product, it is strongly and negatively affected by hot environment. So the hot environment is one of the major threats to the production of milk and meat in terms of quality and quantity. Cows with elevated body temperature exhibit lower dry matter intake. As we have seen in the figure, it can reduce the feed intake. Therefore, the milk yield and produce milk with lower efficiency, reducing profitability for dairy farms in hot weather. The effect of heat stress on meat quality. It can also it can also affect the growth rate of beef cattle by reducing the feed intake, and as we have seen, it can reduce the maintenance energy which required to the animal to survive. So the energy for production, it can be very low. So we don't have a good production. It will be affected negatively by the heat stress. If we look at this figure, the heat stress, it has metabolic responses and physiological responses. As we have seen in the previous figure, the physiological responses, it increase the respiration rate, heart rate, body temperature. It can reduce, increase the feed intake. So reduce the feed intake and increase the water intake, and can reduce the growth rate. So eventually we end up with live and carcass, a very small live and carcass weight. And also it can affect the meat quality. We will be having muscle dry matter, darker meat. So if we slaughter animal under condition of heat stress, as we know, the muscle glycogen pre-slaughter, it can be very low. The depletion, the muscle glycogen is very important for the meat quality, because after slaughtering the animal, the muscle glycogen, it can be converted into lactic acid through the anaerobic glycolysis. So if there is any lack of muscle glycogen, we end up with meat with high ultimate pH. The ultimate pH, as we know, is supposed to be between 5.4 to 5.8. So if there is any heat stress to the animal, that's why we are very careful about the pre-slaughter handling of the animal. That's why we have got shaded fence in the abattoirs in order to rest the animal and keep the level of muscle glycogen more high in order to get the good ultimate pH. Otherwise, if there is any heat stress, can end up with high ultimate pH over 6. If it is over 6, so the meat, it can be very dark and low oxygen penetration, and we end up with something it's called DFD, dry, firm, and dark meat. That's why we have got darker meat, and it's low fall of pH. If the pH is higher, so the shelf life, it can be affected negatively. So the pH is very important for killing the microbes, and also it can affect the other things, reduction of light scattering. Low L light is L is lightness, A is redness, and B is yellowness. Those parameters, colors of meat. So if we have got high ultimate pH, we're gonna have very dark meat in order to reduction of light scattering of the meat. And also Warner Brothers shear force, lower values. This, what do you call it? These parameters for measuring the meat tenderness. Actually, like when you cut the meat, if you need high value force, that means the meat is very tough. If it is easy to be cut it or to be shared, so the meat is tender. So when we have got lower values, of Warner Brothers shear force, that meat is tender. I think this is supposed to be, we end up with tough meat, not lower values of shear force. And also my fibril fragmentation index supposed to be lower. It's against the Warner Bros. Shear force. We are not going to go in deep about the parameters of meat quality. But if we slaughter the animal, we have to know if we slaughter the animal and the heat stress, we end up with the low quality of meat in terms of color, in terms of texture as well. This is what is happening in the beef cattle. So if we look at the poultry and pigs, actually we can also get very bad meat. So in poultry, the glycolysis, I mean the anaerobic glycolysis of glycogen, it can be started before slaughtering, and so very fast of slowing down of the ultimate pH. Also, we can have an adverse impact, rapid pH fall, loss in weight of breast. We also we're gonna have something called Bell, soft and executive. We also what do you call the drip loss? It can be very high. So we can conclude from this figure, when we slaughter animal under heat stress condition, we will be having a very bad quality of meat in term of color, in term of in term of texture, in term of other parameters like drip loss. So we will be having a video about climate change impact on livestock. So I'm requesting from it about 20 minutes. I'm requesting from everyone to have a paper and write down. So we will be discussing whatever we will see in the video, and I will be asked like 5 or 10 of you randomly about what they get from the video, and also I can give some of you to tell us what did you or what we could get from the video. So let me share it and before I started, can you see it? Yes, I need your response. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes. Sir,
Yes.
yes. Did you share the video?
Not yet. Actually, I did share it, but I couldn't see it. But let me try to share it quickly.
Extreme storms, which then cause erosion problems.
We have more dust, which can create some respiratory problems.
Heat stress in the animal affect their production.
The cells are uncomfortable, and so they just don't perform as well.
Sorry, doctor.
Yeah.
But the video itself is not. The video itself is not.
Hello, doctor, the video is not displaying.
It's not playing for you, right?
Yeah,
didn't see
yeah,
the
the
video,
video is not
doctor.
displaying.
Okay. Is it playing?
Yeah, it's okay,
we can see it
doctor.
now.
So you can see
Yeah,
it, right?
it's playing now. Yes, yes.
Okay. I want to remind everyone to have a pen and write down. So we will be discussing the video when we're done from it. Okay. All the best for all of us, and even me. I have got my pen, I have got my paper. So we will be writing down some comments and we will be discussing it. Okay.
Extreme storms, which then cause erosion
Problems.
Heat stress.
extreme storms, which then cause erosion problems.
We have more dust, which can create some respiratory problems.
Heat stress on the animal, affect their production.
The sows are uncomfortable, and so they just don't perform as well.
Agricultural production is at the mercy of weather and climate. Adequate rainfall and but when precipitation patterns or temperatures fall out of the normal range, both crops and livestock are impacted.
Well, my name is David Schmidt, and I'm an agricultural engineer at the University of Minnesota and the regional coordinator for the Animal Agriculture and Changing Climate Project. Climate is not constant, and climate conditions have always and will continue to impact agriculture. Most of us can identify with the challenges of a long drought, a big flood, extreme heat, or extreme cold on animal production. Sometimes death loss or property loss is inevitable, but there are other more subtle impacts that occur with only slight changes in climate and weather. These changes in milk production, animal health, or feed efficiency can also result in significant economic losses. Reducing these impacts requires three things: understanding local, regional, national, and international climate trends, identifying farm-specific vulnerabilities to these trends, and making strategic changes on the farm to minimize these impacts. This lecture presents an overview of some of the climate impacts, but more importantly, describes a systematic approach to identifying the impacts or assessing farm vulnerability to these climate changes.
The best way to identify climate impacts on the farm is through a farm climate impacts audit. An audit is a systematic approach to evaluating a process or system to identify weaknesses. This lesson will take you through some of the key elements to be evaluated by a farm climate impacts audit. Those elements include farm inputs, animal production, logistics, and farm exports. The elements may differ from farm to farm, and so the audit should be conducted with the understanding that each individual farm is unique, and any audit may divert from the systematic approach. The farm inputs most affected by climate impacts are feed and forage. The impacts can be related to seasonal changes in temperature or rainfall, or by extreme events such as drought and flooding. These impacts can affect both the quantity and the quality of feed and forage. The effects can be seen in row crops, forages, or in pastures. Climate trends with seasonal temperature and rainfall trends will impact productivity of the field. Negatively impact feed and forage production. Farmers and agriculture professionals from around the world can attest to the impacts of climate on feed and forage.
One of the challenges on many dairy farms is weather patterns and harvest windows. Let's say you need a 4-day window to harvest high quality forage because it's going to rain every 2 days. Then, even though he knows what he needs, Mother Nature says sometimes it interferes. I think a lot of it back to climate change and weather, those patterns. But again, if you look at the improvements,
when you have a situation where animal numbers are reasonably high, as they were because they built up over a couple of wet years, and you get a sudden drought that's quite widespread, you have limited capacity to maintain those animals with food because they rely on natural native grasses. The production of grain for feeding is reduced.
Animal feed often comes from off-farm sources. Farmers should be aware of how vulnerable these off-farm sources are to climate changes. Crop failure on a large scale might make an individual farm vulnerable to short or long-term increases in the price of feed. Another farm input that animal agriculture cannot survive without is water, whether it's water for growing feed or water for the animals to drink. This water may come from groundwater aquifers, rain-fed streams, rivers, lakes, or ponds, or snowmelt. The availability and quality of water on a farm may be affected by seasonal variations in climate. Questions to ask are, where does the water come from for your farm? And how will your farm be impacted by any changes to this supply? Predictability, availability, and timing are critical. Climate and weather also play a role in farm inputs of energy, both electricity and diesel fuel. Backup generators are status quo on most farms, and in areas where there are more intense rains or storms, generators are even more important. On a national scale, fuel supply and fuel prices are impacted by tropical weather events. So energy inputs to the farm are vulnerable not only to the energy supply, but also to changes in price, both short and long term. While the impacts of climate on farm inputs are clear, the most critical impacts of climate on animal agriculture are seen in animal production. Heat stress has always impacted animal production, so any increased frequency of warmer temperatures or more humid conditions can result in additional challenges. According to a study by St. Pierre in 2003, the beef, swine, dairy, and poultry industries were losing $2.4 billion per year due to the impacts of heat stress. These impacts included decreased animal performance, increased mortality, and decreased reproduction. Heat stress can have a critical impact on several different types of farm animals, and the effects can vary by species. Farmers and animal scientists are all well aware of some of these impacts.
Just tell they don't get heat stress. Usually I ask them, do you lose any milk production in the summer? Normally they say yes. So that tells me they have heat stress. A lot of different changes that will occur on the animals. So some impacts on, such as milk production will drop by 5 to 25%, depending on the dairy and what kind of cooling technology, et cetera, that they have. So milk production is the obvious one that a lot of producers will see, but the one that's sometimes forgotten about and is even bigger is reproduction, because we'll see drops of 30 to 75% on some of these dairies, drops in reproduction, because we've genetically made this animal to produce milk, and so that's where she diverts her energy and resources after typical body maintenance. And so reproduction is going to be the last way to come. Obviously, Mother Nature, you're not going to try to sustain an embryo if you can't sustain yourself or milk production that you was bred to do. So reproduction takes an even larger hit, and even at possibly earlier temperatures than what milk production will. But those are production losses wise, but then you'll see behavioral changes with animals starting to pant more, breathing more often, salivating more. They'll stand up and try to get more airflow across them. So you'll see a lot more animals standing.
The extremes would be mortality. The extremes because pigs don't sweat, so they get really hot. But the biggest is they're not going to eat, they're not going to gain. So average daily gain is the biggest thing that it affects. Yeah, so we're seeing seasonal infertility with conception. So we actually overbreed in the summertime to make up for that.
The sow's thermometer zone is at about 65 degrees Fahrenheit. And so anytime she starts to get above those temperatures, she's going to start to feel heat stress. And there's probably variation among sows as to where they really start to feel the effects of that. But the further you get above at 65 degrees, the more heat stress they feel. So a sow at 70 is going to feel maybe a little uncomfortable. Maybe her respiration rate will increase a little bit. When it gets to 80, it's going to be even more uncomfortable. It gets to 90, it's going to get just miserable. And so it's just a matter of degree. And to say that technically, once she's outside her thermal neutral zone, she's heat stressed, but it's a matter of degree.
If humidities are really high, you have the heat loss becomes more inefficient. So they have to work harder to try to get rid of that extra heat. Panting birds use energy. They have to generate energy to be able to do that panting, because that's all done with muscular contraction. And so the more they have to pant, the longer they have to pant, the more energy they're using, the more you can get byproducts of the energy metabolism built up. That's going to take an effect acid phase balance. And then that will have a negative impact on a bird in terms of how long it can actually take them to be able to control its body temperature before it starts to increase and reaches a lethal state. So assuming we're not talking about lethal temperatures, that birds are able to take and control their body temperature, it takes energy for them to be able to do that. So they're spending this feed energy in terms of trying to keep up with this panting process. Yeah, and then the feed intake will decrease. So depending upon where you are on that response curve, you'll see some decreased feed intake, and then you'll see actually a worsening of the feed conversion or feed efficiency, because again, they're using feed energy more for maintenance of body temperature, and then eventually over time. Rate of gain will take the decrease as well. Instead of the meat birds, here we're looking at what
I'm sorry, Professor, to interruption. There is no voice actually. Video is running well, but sound is not here.
Component of the market out there, right? That the weather actually does kind of control it a little bit, and maybe we can beat it somehow.
The process, if they don't have to feed, they have to sell them. But you can't sell them into abattoirs if the abattoirs are already full. So you get a build-up of animals, and the cost of feeding them becomes very high. So that's how it impacts through the supply chain. And farmers actually end up losing money, and in the end, some of them have started to lose their breeding stock as well as their productive animals.
Climate change can result in farm-specific impacts, along with regional, national, and global, by the impact these weather trends might have on the farm operation. Some might like to organize this information in a table format. When doing this, try to list as much detail about potential impacts, including economics, as possible. This more detailed information is useful.
Welcome back again. Hello, can you hear me? I heard from some of you, they did not hear the voice of the video. I don't know if it was clear or not. Anyway, I can make a conclusion to the video, and then we can start the discussion. I just need your response from the host if my voice is clear, so I can go ahead. Hello?
Yes, your voice is clear, sir.
Okay, my voice is clear. So as I heard from some of you guys, the voice or the sound of the video was not clear for some of the people, but I'm going to conclude it right now. Actually, in the beginning of the video, we have seen they were talking about the effect of climate change, like changing the weather, by storms, which can cause erosion problems, and also there is a more dust can also make respiratory problems, and heat stress on the animal affect their production and performance. And also we have seen some pigs were uncomfortable and they do not perform well because of the heat stress. So the agricultural production depends on the weather and climate change. Therefore, ideal temperature result in good crop production and protective pasture and healthy animals as well. So the ideal weather is very important for the feed quality and quantity, and also for the animal health. Any changing in precipitation patterns can, or the ambient temperature, can affect the crop and livestock production, and which can impact it, they can affect the crop and livestock production, and most of them can be, what do you call it? Most of them can be affected by the climate change. So the climate change affect the agriculture and pasture through long drought. Maybe we can anticipate or a big flood or extreme heat or cold. Actually, in developing countries, I don't know if we're experiencing cold. In some countries, we can, in some developing countries, we can also experience some cold. Those factors, I mean, long drought or big flood or extreme weather, can be affect the animal production. So they can lead to death or loss of the animal. And also in the middle of the video, they were talking about the approaches idiot, which can identify the weaknesses of the farms. So they started with 4 elements: farm input, animal production, farm logistics, and farm exports. So when we talk about farm input, as we know, we would like, we have to input to the farm feed, forage, and if the production system like extensive range line system, so we need to take the animal to the free range land. So they have to graze on the pasture. So any changes in the climate change, I mean in the rainfall or temperature, can affect the quality and the quantity of feed and forage. So the extensive system of production system and the intensive system, both of them can be affected by the climate change. The intensive system can be affected by the quality of the crops, and the intensive system can be affected by the quality of the crops, and the extensive system can be affected by the quality of the pasture as well. There is also some talk about the pest, weeds, and diseases can be found due to climate change or due to high ambient temperature. And also the climate change could affect the water by affecting the source of water, groundwater, rivers, lakes, ponds, whatever the source of water. And the water is very important for the growing animal feed, and also is very important for animal drink as well. And the climate change can also affect the some of the element of the farm input. It can be the energy supply. The energy supply, especially in the intensive system. So they need energy in order to make the feed, to generate the things. As we know, the intensive system depends on the technology. So in order to apply this technology, we're supposed to have an electricity. Unfortunately, in some developing countries, we are experiencing load shedding, which we call electricity power cut. Electricity power cut. As we know right now, we are running from there to here in order to get stable electricity, in order to give you this lecture. I don't know the others in other different African country or Asian countries, but this is a situation in some countries. We do have lack of energy, and the energy, it can be affected by the climate change. And if we look at the second element of the audit approach, the animal production, we also we mentioned a lot about the low productivity and low reproduction due to heat stress, which can be affected by high maintenance energy need to animal to survive. So it can be reflected negatively to the reproductive and production. And also we can observe some changes in behavior, more painting, more breathing, as we have seen in the video. As we have seen the bird, they were very stressful due to high ambient temperature. So more and there's high mortality rate due to this stressful, which come from the, what do you call it, from the changing of the climate change or the climate weather. And we have seen birds will spend time painting in order to deal with the heat stress and end up with low fertility, low egg production, and thinner egg shells. So the heat stress can affect the egg production and the quality of egg as well, as we have seen in beef. It can affect the quantity of beef and the quality as well. And the same thing in the case of dairy cattle. Okay, we also, I think there's something about spread diseases and pests can be affected by the climate change through migrations of pests to different new geographical areas. So the diseases, it can be spread due to changing in the climate change. So due to changing in the climate, so tomorrow you will be having a full informative lecture about this issue. And I think the third element, it was about the logistics. As we know, the logistics, including the timing and transporting of young animals, feed and suppliers to the farm, feeding of animals, scheduling of reproduction, movement of animal through the phases of production, and manure management, milking equipment and scheduling, farm maintenance, all this logistic work, it can be affected by the climate change. So for an instance, we can talk about manure management. Manure management, it can be very complicated if we're experiencing very extreme weather, like more rainfall, more precipitation. So it is difficult especially in the intensive system. It is difficult to deal with the risk of overtopping the manure, so it can be accumulated in the farm and it can cause a problem as well. And also the extreme weather can result in more mud, and which can cause problems in animal hooves. This can be seen also in the intensive and extensive system as well. And also it can affect the transport of the animals. And as we know, to do the logistic works, we need a labor. The labors also can be affected by the extreme weathers, either heat or cold, or even more precipitation. It can be affected the work of the laborers in the farm. And I think in the end of the video, the last element of the idiot approach, it was about the farm exports, which means like selling the product for the animals, and some of the farmers found themselves they would like to get rid of the animal because of the high of the high price of the feed, or due to hard condition of the work, so they can buy their product in low prices and end up with financial problems. I think the video, it was about these issues. So before we go for break, as I told you, I would like to interact with the participants. So first, I'm gonna choose randomly 5 of you, and then I'm gonna give like an option to anyone. If you would like to contribute, just raise your hand and tell us what did you get from what I presented and what you have seen in the video as well. Okay, let me pick one of you. Dorin, how are you, Dorin? Can you hear me? Dorin, are you around? Okay, let us be with Dr. Rashid. Dr. Rashid Jeff. No one would like to contribute? Or you are not around? Okay.
Sorry, sir. Actually, they are mute, so are we supposed to unmute them? Just allow us the time.
Okay. Dear host, please unmute Dorin, or unmute all of the, yeah.
Yes, I already done it.
Okay, Dorin, if you are around, please tell us what did you get from what we have mentioned in the presentation and what we have seen in the video about the effect of climate change on livestock so far.
ما له هنا ما ظاهر أنا.
نصر الدين.
Hello.
Nasruddin, how are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Okay,
Dr. Ahmed.
I can see you raised your hand, so you can go ahead. We are listening to you.
I raised my hand. Your video, seriously, it's not clear, and something missing from them. But I understand that about the climate impact from the animal farms. So I see in the dairy farms some dairy cattle is dead, and I think this is not a problem for the climate. I think it's something else like disease or something. And also farm climatic input and logistic and animal production and climate rate. This element due to temperature. And, so I see the animal production. If we take one of them, poultry, it is the climate is have a challenge for the poultry. So for the indigenous breed be more what I mean adapted for the climate, but the other international breeds they need the change the climate to in order to be adaptation for this. So and also water and water in the farm. I see in the rain time need also some treatments if one use in the poultry, and also handling of the manure in the poultry farm for this about the season it is so difficult, and this is make some problems for the poultry. I thank for your chance.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah. Actually, the video was not clear, but I did conclude it. Anyway, I can see Prof. Nema raising his hand. Would you like a chance, Prof? Because tomorrow he will be with you. Nasruddin, could you please mute?
What?
Yourself, could you please mute your audio?
Okay. Hello. Thank you, Dr. Dayan. Now my voice is clear. Can
yes,
you hear
it's
me?
clear. You can go ahead. Yeah, we
okay.
can hear you.
Okay. First, thank you, Dr. Dayan. The video is about, as you explain, about heat stress. As far as my opinion, the video speaks about heat stress in specific farming systems. That is the industrial system. This is not about our livestock management systems in developing countries, because most of the livestock management systems are grassland-based systems. That is pastoral, semi-pastoral, agro-pastoral, and some residential small households. This video is somehow it is derived from industrial systems. It is clear that heat stress affects all production systems, either industrial in Western Europe or Western countries, and in developing countries like Africa and East Asia and Latin America. The whole thing, as we could follow from the television in the previous days, there are huge losses of cattle in Europe now because of high temperature level and heat stress in developing countries and in prevailing systems is less, have less impact because of our adaptable livestock breeds. And that is very important in livestock, in climate change literature. We always find that countries with local breeds have to sustain and preserve their breeds because of climate change. They are already adapted. It is true that their inputs are few, and therefore their output is also few, and people are looking for securing their food. But even though this small production will sustain poor livelihoods of people in rural areas. Secondly, heat stress render the system and products not complying with the 5 freedoms of animal welfare, because animals under stress are subjected to suffering Therefore, products from these systems should be considered as far as animal. Dr. Diane, we are talking about livestock production systems in developing countries, and Europe, Africa, East Asia, Latin America. Most of the developing countries have a small household. Most of the production is coming from small households, the majority, So this video is speaking about another system. I'm afraid to say that it is a problem not to see it in a good way, but anyway, it is a good chance to discuss it. Thank you very much. Hello? 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 It seems you did not hear me. Hello? 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 Oh my God. Hello? Hello? Oh, you are hearing me. No. I finished. I just finished by saying that the video is talking about another system not prevailing in developing country. If it is prevail, it is production is not significant for poor households. Thank you. Oh my God.
Hello, welcome back. Sorry, I experienced a problem with be unmuted, but I would like to respond for the comment from Prof. Anema. Firstly, thank you, Prof, for the valuable comments. Actually, the video, it was like a general about the so the video actually talks about the climate change impact on livestock, either in intensive system or extensive system. Okay, so right now I think you can hear me because I'm unmuted again. I'm muted again. Okay. I said thank you, Prof. Nema, for the valuable comments. The video, it was like a general about the climate change impact on livestock, either in developing countries or other countries. When we concluded, we highlighted some effect on our production systems in developing countries. As we know, the production systems in general of dairy and and what do you call and beef cattle or dairy and beef, it can be intensive systems and extensive systems. Inside the extensive system, we can find the nomadic, semi-nomadic ranches. It could be in between, and intensive and semi-intensive in the category of intensive system. So the climate change has an impact on intensive and extensive system. We can consider the smallholder of dairy farmers as a part of the intensive system, because they keep the animal in intensive place and they feed it in scientific or in modern way. It's not like in free range land system. So the effect of climate change on intensive system can be considered as well. We also highlighted when we concluded the video the effect of the climate change on pasture, mud problems. It can be in the free range land, migration of diseases, high ambient temperature, which can affect the growth rate of animal. And I think we're supposed to finish and give you a chance to discuss again. Still, we have the same information. Because of the time, I just want to finish on time, and then we can give you like 10 minutes or 15 minutes in order to discuss again. We have got the impact of heat stress on poultry and swine production. Pigs, poultry, and ruminant are susceptible to heat stress due to their rapid metabolic rate. We have seen also in the video increased basal metabolic heat production, fast growth, and high level of production. Poultry are particularly prone to heat stress due to the lack of functional sweat gland. As we know, poultry, they don't have a sweat gland, and skin insulation provided by the subcutaneous fat is very low subcutaneous fat in the former and by feather in the latter. Under high temperature conditions, birds alter their behavior and physiological homeostasis in order to make a thermoregulation, thereby decreasing a body temperature. In general, different types of birds react similarly to heat stress, experiencing some individual variations in intensity and duration of their responses. It was found that birds subjected to heat stress conditions spend less time feeding, more time drinking and panting, as well as more time with their wings elevated, less time moving or walking, and more time resting. Animals utilize multiple ways for maintaining thermoregulation and homeostasis when subjected to high environmental temperatures, including increasing radiant, convective, and evaporative heat loss by vasodilation and perspiration. Birds have additional mechanisms to promote heat exchange between their body and environment, which are the air sacs. As we know, birds have got air sacs, and air sacs are very useful during painting, as they promote air circulation on surfaces, contributing to the increased gas exchange with air and consequently the evaporative loss of heat. However, it is worth noting that increased painting under heat stress condition lead to increased carbon dioxide level and higher blood pH, which in turn hamper blood bicarbonate availability for eggshell mineralization and and induces increased organic acid availability, also decreasing free calcium level in post-blood. And this is very important in breeders and laying hens, as it is affect eggshell quality and end up with thinner eggshells globally. When we talk about the effect of heat stress in the swine industry, globally, pork is one of the most consumed animal. Surrounding food, reduced and inconsistent growth, decreased feed efficiency, decreased carcass quality, increased lipid deposition, and decreased protein acceleration, poor sow performance, decreased reproductive performance, male and female, as the same as the effect of heat stress on the other animals, especially on the reproductive performance. It can be decreased due to the effect of climate change, increased mortality and morbidity are the main economic losses associated with heat stress in the swine industry. The impact of climate change on livestock production systems. As we know, the risk potential associated with livestock system due to global warming can be characterized by levels of vulnerability as influenced by animal performance and environmental parameters. The natural patches. As we know, in Sudan or in other developing countries, most of our production comes from the natural patches. Like more than in Sudan, more than 80%, or we can say 90%, come from the free rangeland or natural pastures. The natural pasture on which the bulk of livestock owners rely for feeding the animals are degrading in terms of quality and quantity of fodders. So the feed it can be degraded due to the effect of climate change. Furthermore, the accessible water sources are unreliable as they can dry up owing to high temperature and a lack of rainfall. We can also experience a lack of rainfall by changing the precipitation patterns due to the effect of climate change, excessive. So we can also experience excessive heat, a lack of water, nutrient, and unknown diseases have all contributed to the loss of the animals or livestock. In conclusion, we can conclude that the potential impact on livestock include changes in production and quality of feed crops and forage, water availability, animal performance, example, rate of gain, milk production per day, eggs per day, and also the quality of the product, diseases, reproduction, and biodiversity. This impact are primarily due to an increase in temperature and atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration, precipitation variation, and a combination of these factors. So what we need as a result, livestock farmers need effective adaptation and mitigation strategies to reduce the impact of climate change on livestock production. And I think it will be covered on the last day of the training by Prof. Anima, the one who just gave a comment before 15 minutes. And these strategies should support the livestock keepers to fight the impact of climate change, which requires investments and planning from private and government authorities to develop climate change adaptation and mitigation policies that are efficient, affordable, and practical to smallholder livestock farmers in our developing countries. And I do agree with Prof. Nima. He said most of the production system in developing countries come from a small holder. If we look at Sudan as example, the dairy production system depend on the smallholder and the crossbreed around the big cities. And also, if we look at the meat production or beef industry, mainly depend on the free or natural pasture, and then we do something it's called finishing or feedlot around the big cities as well before slaughtering the animal or export the animal to other countries. I think we have done for today, and thank you all. So I'm gonna open the chance for the comment and for the participant to ask if they have any question, if they have any addition, you are welcome. And also, if you would like to add a comment about the video we have seen on about the whole presentation, you are welcome. And thank you very much. I hope it was an informative lecture.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dayan. Thank you very much. I think we have two people raising their hands. I think it is first Dr. Imad Fawzi, and also I think Dorian. He has been raising his hand for a long time. So
okay,
if Dorian is available.
Sorry, Dr. Murtada, for disruption. Actually, I would like to ask the host to make me a co-host in order to control myself, to be mute or unmute in order to respond to the participants.
Okay.
If it is possible.
So this is over to Kamal. I don't have the authority to make someone.
Let me make it a co-host.
Yeah, just make me.
Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Daniel, you are now co-host.
Oh, I can see over there. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Dr. Fawzi, you can go. Dr. Imad Fawzi. Dr. Imad Fawzi, you can go ahead. I think he's experiencing a problem with. The microphone with you, Dr. Imad Fawzi.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Dayan.
Yeah, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
Yes, I am Dr. Ahmad Fawzi from Egypt.
Welcome.
In the beginning, thank you, Dr. Dayan, for your presentation. And excuse me for I can't hear majority of the video, but I have one question. Can I ask now?
Yeah, you can ask. You're welcome.
Yes. Yes. I ask about the strategy of your country in the short term and long term to solve the problems of climate change and heat stress, which lead to reduces the animal production or livestock production. If you have.
Okay, no problem. Actually, I focused on the impact of climate change on livestock production system or on animals, the part of the strategies and mitigation of the climate change. It will be presented by Prof. Anema on the last day. So we don't want to overlap with other lecturers. I think, yeah.
Yes, yeah, yes, I know that. Yeah. Yes, okay. but I want to know. I think it's very useful. Is the strategy of Sudan country as a tropical country, or the model of the strategy as a model to tropical countries? It will be very useful to the other countries in Africa and Asia.
I didn't get your question properly. Could you please repeat it? Or is it a comment? It is a comment.
Are you want to say the other lectures will answer about this question?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Thank
exactly.
you.
Exactly. Prof. Nema has prepared his lecture about the strategies and mitigation.
I am waiting to know that. I am waiting to know that. Doctor.
Yeah, you have to wait for him. Even me, I'm looking forward to attend his lecture.
Yes, yes, Doctor. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You are welcome. You are welcome.
Thank you.
I think we left with 10 minutes. So I'm waiting to raise your hand, guys. I'm waiting for you to raise your hand.
My microphone were mute. It's not my problem.
Okay, I can mute you. You are unmuted right now, Dr. Imad Fauzi. I would like to thank you very much for. Okay, there's someone raising his hand. Yeah, just briefly tell us about yourself. I couldn't pronounce your name. Yao. You can go ahead.
Yeah, Yao Jaku. Dog.
Okay.
Yeah, Jaku, Yao.
Where from?
I have one simple question. Come again, dog.
Okay, I can hear you.
My question is, so how
does sorry before you start your question, where from?
Ghana.
Oh, you are from Ghana. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I'm from Ghana.
So what do you do for work?
Agricultural extension officer.
Okay, you are welcome.
Thank you, dog.
Okay, you're welcome. I don't know where you have been. Have you been around, Jacob? I couldn't hear your voice. Dorin, you have raised your hand and.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Yeah,
I can hear you.
back. I'm back. The network was very bad.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Jaku from Ghana.
You are welcome. You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, doctor. Yeah, the network was very bad. That's why. My question is, how does beef production cause greenhouse gases emission?
Okay, so it's a very simple question. It can cause greenhouse emission through the fermentation. As a result of fermentation, as we know, the feed stuff, it can be fermented in the rumen of the ruminant. So we can expect high methane gas as a result of the fermentation of the feedstuff inside the rumen of the ruminants. This gas, this methane gas, this methane gas, it can cause this methane gas, it can cause, what do you call it, the greenhouse emission, and also if we look at, what do you call it, the change of the livestock supply change, and we also said globally about 14.5% of greenhouse gas emission can come from livestock supply chain through indirect way. That means via indirect source of those gases and carbon through land use and feed production. So we can anticipate the greenhouse gas emission come from directly from the animal and from the supply chain as well. And I think the lecture yesterday, it was about the contribution of the beef production or animal on the greenhouse gas emission. I hope you got my answer. Anyone raising his hand? We left with 6 minutes. Dorin. Where is Dorin? I ask you to unmute yourself. Okay.
Hello, Doreen from Malawi.
You're welcome.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you properly. You can go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to comment on the video you showed and on the comment you presented.
Okay.
Yeah, that in Malawi, climate change impact on livestock is very great.
Oh.
In the sense that, as we're talking today, load shedding is a great problem.
Wow.
And
yes.
farmers who are participating in hatchery, they cannot hatch anymore because it's very expensive because of load shedding. Now they use genset, which is expensive. Due to flood, one of the intake here have been flushed away by flood.
Okay.
And the dry spell, most of the farmers, they are facing straight to heat in their daily production and the livestock production. That's more ruminant. So this topic will help us as Malawians to get ideas on how best we can adapt the climate change issues for our farmers to be able to participate in livestock, even if we face climate change challenges in Malawi. That's what I wanted to comment.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Load shedding is everywhere in Africa. Actually, we are experiencing very tough load shedding in Sudan.
Yeah, even here in Malawi, one of the intakes rushed away this year due to floods. Yes.
Load shedding is some people, they don't know about load shedding. This term.
Yeah.
Actually, it is. I explain it. What does it mean? But it means the cut of electricity power.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it can affect the input. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much, Dorin from Malawi. There's some. Okay. Welcome. Honey, you can You can
Hello,
unmute
doctor.
yourself.
Salam alaikum.
Yeah.
How are you, doctor?
Alaikum assalam.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you properly.
Yes. My name is Hani Bawad, Dr. Hani Bawad. I'm from Yemen.
You are welcome.
Thank you very much. I have one question, doctor, about the seasonality of animals. How can climate change affect on reproduction in seasonal animals, like camels, like in winter and in summer, like this? How that can affect of in reproduction also?
Okay, you mean the effect on reproduction? Actually,
Yes.
as we know, the effect of reproduction.
And seasonal animals.
Okay, yes. You mean the effect of season on
Yes,
on
effect of
reproduction?
season and the climate change for that.
Okay.
How that can affect on the seasonal animals,
Okay.
like camels, like horses, like.
Okay. Actually, the researchers found that during hot days or during hot summer, the fertility or reproductive performance, it can be reduced or it can be decreased. I mean the testicular volume, I mean the sperm, I mean
Yes.
also, yeah, I
Semen
mean
collection.
also, yeah, yes, the estrous cycle, it can be affected by the climate change and the season effect. Even if we would like to study the effect of climate change, we're supposed to look at the effect of the season, because it is changing in the weather, and we know the summer or the reproductive, it can be affected by what do you call the effect physiologically, you know, during the summer, the light, it can affect the pineal gland, which can the pineal gland,
which
which
decreases
can,
like melatonin hormone.
Yes, it can decrease the melatonin hormone, and also it can it can send messages to what do you call it, pituitary gland, in order,
Pituitary gland, yes, and gonadotropic hormone.
To release the gonadotropic hormone, luteinizing hormone, and follicle stimulating hormone. And during during the winter, during the long day, the effect, it will be I think positive.
Long day photoperiod.
Long summer. We have got, like, what do you call it, light. The effect comes from the light, effect on the pineal gland, and it will affect on the pituitary gland, and then it's gonna release the gonadotropic hormones, LH and FSH, so they can affect the performance of reproductive traits in both sexes, males and females. I hope
but I think that the important animal effect in males than female. Thank you, doctor. Thank you.
They can also affect, as we seen in the presentation. We pointed out the females, it could be affected. The estrous cycle, it could be affected, and I think the volume of follicles, it could also affect the number and
the
also
size,
if
the dimension.
The size, it can also be affected.
Okay. The same effect in winter, in the winter, the seasonal.
No, different. When we say the seasonal effect, that means if the summer is different from the effect in summer, is different from winter, from spring, from autumn. You see, we have if we say we have got a seasonal effect on reproductive traits, so we expect in one of the season, the effect differ from others. You get what I mean? You get
Yes,
what I
yes.
mean? Yeah.
Yes.
So we anticipate during hot summer or high ambient temperature, the fertility or the reproductive rate, it can be reduced.
Okay.
So they can perform better in good condition actually. When there is actually even in the acute, what do you call, in the tough winter as well, we can get
Yes.
adverse impact also because of the thermoregulation. When there is changing in ambient temperature, animals seeking for thermoregulation, they increase the maintenance energy and in order to be survived, and they reduce the energy supposed to go for reproduction, supposed to go for production. You get what I mean?
Yes. Thank you very much,
Okay.
sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Sir.
Okay, I think we have done. There's no one raising his hand. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dayan. Thank you.
Welcome.
As we come to the end of today's session, I would like to thank Dr. Ahmed Dayan Brema for his great efforts, and to all our lectures also. Actually, each lecture in this course is a very large topic that we cannot or to cover all of the topic in just one lecture. So thanks for them for this great effort. And we need to focus on that. We need to say that we just share ideas and we provide answers and provide questions that which need answers. And also we can provide ideas that can be used for further discussion, for even for further research. And also we need, also from this course, we can focus or detect the weak points and how to overcome them, and to focus on the positive aspect of climate change and how we can face it and to reinforce it. So thank you very much for all participants. Thank you very much for your valued ideas, and wish you a very happy day, and see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.